Hello there. So this is an overview of the moments for the sake of documenting the day when I used GPT 5.4. Um, my IDE environment, I was using Visual Code, and so what we have here, I'm basically navigating the JSON log files. Went back to that day. Usually, when I'm developing, building as a founder, as a developer, my projects, I always code using memorandums. Okay. This day I didn't do that way. I was just interacting with GPT and more like the way, not, I don't want to say the beginners do that, but the way that I used to do it before, right? But for a complex project, it's always good to have a writing in the middle, right? The process from the writing, from the bottoms up. We end up polishing the writing. Sometimes you want to print, sometimes you want to read, sometimes you're from the bottoms up activity. You're actually repurpose the writing as a process, right, or something like that. So there are lots of things in there. But this was more like a session, right, to live through the experience, not to insert my processes in there. And by the way, I didn't organize like that. I just came out. I know I wanted to get up to speed right there. Okay, so I didn't know about the JSON log files, these huge log files. Very important, by the way, right? Uh, and now I can browse, and in terms of documenting the session, I also realized because I what I did here, by the way, using GPT 5.4, because the file is huge. The first file there of the big moment, initial moment, it's 2 megabytes. At 2 megabytes, and I couldn't open in Visual Code, and then when I tried to make a browser to navigate through the files, like a raw browser for these JSON files, also trouble because right, to visualize things and etc. And then I decided and I asked GPT 5.4 to give me a pre-processor, a script to pre-process those huge files. And well, the first thing actually before that, I asked the tool GPT to identify from all this so many files here, which is the files where we had the word typewriter, right? And like the big relevant day. And I don't know what the tool did, but it was a great work, really quick. And it went straight to the day. I was like, whoa. And then now here, after that problem of the big files, and I was like, okay, so we will need to cluster these things, right? To break in fragments. And I may have influenced by, clusterize the big file for me. And it gave us, right? It gave us this, something like this. The big file is there on top here. And the directory clusters, it follows the logic of the to have a way that we can browse through in a way that is performant and not so heavy for the browser or for any tool. So breaking by the clusters, right? So for instance, breaking by chunks or breaking by the clusters that we can navigate. And then I realized, by the way, this is the pre-pro out. This is out. If you run in this project the pre-run script, then what you get is this breakdown. They didn't ask for that, but including the text breakdown that I was able to navigate and see, oh, whoa, I have everything in there. Right? That's point number one. So then with the tool, then I later realized that the chunks of the JSON log turned out to be clusterized by these different kinds. And then this helped me actually to, ooh, so this is what the tool does, right? Nice, and etc. The different kinds of messages that we have in an ongoing session. And then, I was organized the information here to document how things are. And then I realized that I didn't try to use this tool at all. And then one thing that I could do there is to type on the right hand side the user message keyword, and that gave me this view of the things that I told the tool, right? So from here it's interesting, right? Because of course we can start organizing there. Like, hello there, the very first thing. Could you help me? Could you help me set up the environment? Uh, Give me a tool that I can download this thing from Web Archive. That was the first thing. Next, in the block 150, can you help me out here, buddy? I want to be able to run this example. Please remove the Web Archive unneeded injected scripts. You know, I have some experience in there to say that Web Archive injects toolbars and etc. Right? So that's a good influence in there to clean up things. Later, no need to start for me because sometimes I don't have that. I'm still like, I still fear that the tool, like, it's a bad fear, you know, like, you don't hold your horses, I'm still here. Sometimes no environment things, normal setup, no clutter dynamic, because sometimes like in that, right, help and parts and environment variables, like if this is a production software, no, I just wanted to work in a demo, right? So I had to influence that. Use Express because I think it started because probably because I did say no accesses, right? But I really wanted an Express server. I wanted the server JS, something index public. Why I asked for an index public? Because I am thinking about bringing many other demos back from the days. Because, for instance, I have a very nice one where I implemented the welcome page for the next Netscape 6 browser. And that page, that demo is totally broken. Right. Going, so, you know, like, go moving forward, we're going to need directory with many demos. Demo typewriter. Hey, buddy, do you think we could centralize? Now I started to, you know, I probably saw something there and it was partly working. And it was like, let's centralize because I was thinking, oh, this is for OpenAI Gallery for developers, right? So they can learn. We're going to talk about the use cases, right? So do you have the matrix where the content areas is? So here I'm influencing that things are raw, you know, like, let's keep it as close as possible to the original thing. As far as I remember, you know, I'm influencing that actually the developer there. I wrote that in 99. So, you know, I Web Archive, I wrote in 99. I'm hoping by now that this tool respects the fact that we are doing some forensic work here, right? It's not about taking a visual and writing in a new framework, right? As far as I remember, I used fixed positioning, right? This is really like, you know, we want to keep in fixed positioning, my friend, right? Because otherwise it changes everything, right? Change the whole markup, everything would break because, you know, the dinosaur just needed some frog DNA there, right? It was almost intact, you know, the DNA from the dinosaur. And then if you know the dimensions of the actual canvas, I don't know how to call that. Uh, I was trying to make a point about the viewports. I don't know why I said that, but I don't know how to call it. I meant to say viewport. Could you keep that demo centralized for now? I'm moving towards the gallery, right? Because nowadays, right, we do want the thing on the left-hand side. That's so. Here's where the problem starts. As the dinosaur, right, is coming up, right, from the oven, then the developer messes up everything, right? And that's the rabbit hole. That's when we dig and spend time. Um, and later, I caught myself making mistakes. You know, start I add an effect there, the 3D effect to actually with a good intention. But I was going to mess up everything, and I kept on track. You know, back to the goals. What's your goal here, right? It's just bring this demo. This is supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be educational, right? It's supposed to right and go. Hey, buddy, this day I was like really treating the tool like a buddy. I do that, but the body word came too much. I don't remember if I was probably not typing. I was probably using Whisper Flow, the voice-based keyboard. Okay, keep that in mind, because sometimes if here's a problem, right? It costs or whatever. I don't know if it even costs these days for this kind of GPT sections, but of course I ask myself, right, what's happening here? But here's the problem: how can I coordinate a narrative if I'm not myself? Then there's no narrative anymore, right? And sometimes the narrative is the way that you actually take you to further work, and that takes you to success. So how can I judge intermediary steps and not be myself through the steps? Anyway, um, inside the directive, we're talking about assets here, right? We're talking about assets. See, I found a problem in there with a light graphic not showing up behind the mask. And then I use this word, right? I do you have evidence of in the code of the position where it's supposed to appear? You know, like let's not work around if there anything in there that's halfway there thing. I don't know. Something is broken because when I tap the button, then I was giving the easy case slightly, right? I think the expected thing is that that image starts with visibility read and then again recalling the recipe. Right. Anyway, that's bug kind of thing. Thank you very much. Let's fix the character, how the characters appear. One image was missing. I even thought about artificially synthesizing that image. But then I was like, no, 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 no. It was the O character, right? I replaced it with a zero. Oh, now I remember. Maybe I never had the O in there. It was the zero. And I maybe, because the O, right, the zero is the O with the cross, with the diagonal. Maybe I did that back in the days, and maybe during the translation or something. I don't know if in the web archive the I didn't check the original code, but maybe the O I was never there in the first place, because how on earth, right, would the O disappear and all the other characters stay there? I don't know. Actually, I may know, and we know by now that's probably the case. Nevertheless, could you update git ignores, etc. README? Now we're talking about license and the videos because I was recording like this, and goes on and on. See, here's one thing about delivering things to the world. You complete the pain, right? The dinosaur is back. And then the problem is this. I was very lucky that I sent you this colleague, this friend, and from like every 2 or 3 years, I send something to him. And every time I send something to this guy, he worked for Mozilla, folks, for 10 years after I worked for Mozilla. And then Felipe, and he gave me that eye, which is the I tested here, and they won't see something, right? And then he was, this is the serious polished work necessary for a gallery. And then that was very, very, very important. Otherwise, maybe I send the demo to OpenAI gallery folks, and they wouldn't be able to see. You think it's working, the dinosaur. No, when you send, it's like they can see, because there is something broken, and people may not have the time and patience to set up for you. So we did some polish work in there. For example, right? Provisioning the HTML page so it serves from GitHub, that kind of thing, that kind of model of thinking. From now on, we're doing that. And some polish work came in the actual mechanics, the dynamics of the demo in terms of the user flow. So I end up later doing other things as well, like centralizing, etc., for the gallery, right? But of course, the core of this work had nothing to do with that. And it's very important to keep in mind that this was not a broken, there was not a totally broken demo, okay? It was about bringing back to some extent, download this from web archive, and etc. The other demo that I'm working on, that's Netscape 6 welcome web page, that's totally broken. And that's very interesting because I started doing that work and it brought back beautifully. So, all the characters were like stacked on the left hand side. And then out of the sudden, whoa, back, the Netscape 6 welcome page is back. But, the translation work going on there, it's not that complex, right? It's very simple actually. But that maybe the dynamics here it's about respecting, not no, don't go crazy, all right? Don't invent new things in there. Don't use screenshots and prints in some of the cases, so you bypass and work around what you have to do. I think that's the like probably the key essence of this project here. Thank you very much. I think that's enough for now.